Welcome back to another episode of Auction Talk with Steffes Group on the Mighty 790 and 104.7 KFGO. I'm Rusty Halverson, and with me in the studio, Max Steffes, a third-generation auctioneer from Steffes Group. Welcome back to the KFGO studios, Max.
Hey, Rusty. It's good to be back in here.
You've got another guest, and we're familiar with the guest. He's been here before. Chris Gellner, construction guru and director of sales, a leader in Canada, originally from the Langdon area. Chris, welcome back.
Well, thanks, Rusty. It's great to be back. Appreciate you having me.
Now, today we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on north of the border. Do you want to start off, Max, just sharing once again the story of how Steffes Group has expanded into the Canadian market, and a big step for the company, too?
Yeah, you bet, Rusty. So we did actually show an auction talk on that, but as we were talking in radio, you got to repeat yourself so everybody hears what you're talking about.
That's correct.
You do that 8 times a day, right?
or more.
So last fall, we went ahead and acquired Bruce Stepanski Auctioneering, and that was our first foray into Canada. We've also hired on a few other people into Canada, and so this year is basically our first year operating in Canada as an auction company, and we've got a lot of exciting things on the horizon. And I just thought it would be great to bring Chris back into the studio to kind of talk about those exciting things in terms of our auction calendar. We've got about 20 auction events coming up in Canada, and all the people and personnel and the logistical things. And, of course, the tariff situation is top of mind. Maybe get Chris's take on what he's been hearing from the communities up there that he's been visiting with. So that's kind of the subject of our conversation today, I thought, Rusty.
Okay, now, Chris, let's just start off. What have you been up to? What's been going on north of the border?
Well, we've been busy. Beginning of the year was just kind of getting everybody acclimated, getting some technology procedures together, getting a Canadian tenant, which is a backside operation. You've got to have separate entities, U.S. and Canada. And once we got all that rolling, it's just time to dig in and get into the auction business, right?
Yeah.
And we've been really, really busy with training. The Stepanskis obviously had different systems than we did, so we're in the middle of teaching and training everybody how our new nucleus system works and the Steffes' front-end website, and then really getting in touch with our customers and getting them used to what we're doing, because it's not necessarily a website that they're used to and a process that they're used to or process. We're just doing a lot of hand-holding and chatting with some really nice people and making some friends up there right now.
Yeah, and trying to make the transition as seamless as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Transition's always hard. Change is always hard for everyone. And so the reality is we've just got to make sure that we're taking our time with our current employees, anyone new that we're bringing on, and also the customers and clients that we're looking to deal with.
Yeah, because you guys you're building up quite the team up there.
Yeah, we
Seems
really
like
are.
Chris hires a new person every other day.
Well, Max, when good people come to you, you got to grab them when you have a chance. Isn't that the truth?
You got to have good help.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. So, so far, what have you seen so far? How are things going? And looking ahead, we've got a brand new year, brand new calendar year, first full year. What are you looking forward to, Chris?
Well, to be honest with you, the first thing I'm really looking forward to is on April 3rd, we've got our first live auction, and it is a large live auction event. There's going to be, 350-ish assets on that event right now, and something we haven't done in a long time. The live auction space with COVID went away a while ago, and it has come back in the States, but not as heavily as I think any auctioneer for sure would hope, because that was our time to network and meet people and just enjoy time with friends and customers and those things. And so we had a really great opportunity with Higher Yield Ag Solutions and the Brown Ridge family. They're retiring and moving on, and they've sold all their land, and we are the lucky ones that are going to get to sell all their assets off. So it should be fun.
And Chris, give people an idea of when we say large farm auction, even in the Red River Valley, that would be 2 combines, 2 quad tracks. Just give people an idea of how much bigger ag is there in terms of what's on that auction. Maybe talk about the Seed Hawk air drills and how massive those are, and just the differences between U.S. ag and Canadian ag.
Yeah, sure, Max. That's actually a really good point. Rusty, it's interesting. I first go up there, and Jason LeBlanc, who's a longtime auctioneer and auction person that's now on the Steffes team. First time I went to his farm, I asked him, how much canola he was farming, and he said, "Well, I have 3 fields." And Jason likes to give you a little grief once in a while, and he said he had 3 fields of canola. Well, what I didn't realize is in those 3 fields, one was 13 quarters, the other one was 12 quarters, and the other one was 12 quarters,
That's
and there was only
a
one road
field.
splitting them.
Yeah.
So
Crazy.
pretty wild, just the scope and size. And so you'll see these guys running 80, 90, 100-foot air drills, and they'll have 3, 4, 5 of them. So on the higher yield sale, we've got 4 9 series, 9 class New Holland combines, 2 quad tracks, 4-wheel drives. I think there's 7 or 8 2-wheel drives, an 84-foot Seed Hawk, a 60-foot Seed Hawk, a 60-foot John Deere, all air drills, corn planter in Canada, believe it or not.
Wow, surprising.
And, multiple sprayers, multiple swathers. I want to say there's 6 or 8 grain trailers, 6 or 8 trucks. Just
Wow.
It's a really, really large auction for anywhere in North America, to be honest with you, and absolute immaculate, beautiful equipment. So it's going to be a sight to be seen. Something we haven't done in a long time, Max.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to going up there. We're going to have a little bit of a Steffes convention up there in terms of help. There's a lot of help. I think there's 25, 30 Steffes employees going up alone. And I'm really excited because I haven't been up to Canada and just get a flavor for what's going on up there, the culture from a farming perspective. And then, like Chris said, the live auction environment. Another interesting part, we were talking in the lobby, I guess pies are a thing up there, Chris?
Oh, you betcha.
Pies as in bake a pie, bake
Bake a
baked
pie.
pies.
Bake a pie. If you're going to go to a live auction sale north of the border, you better have pies. Our Facebook page is blowing up, and everyone says, are you going to have pies? So for all you listeners out there, when you're coming up to the Higher Yield Ag Solution, we will have 250 pies ready to go, eh? So come up and eat.
That's funny.
Now, what kind of pies? Is there a preference on flavor? Are we talking rhubarb? Are we talking apple pie?
With 250 pies, Rusty, we can kind of cover the rainbow. So we're going to have a little of everything, I think.
Yeah. And a live auction, this has got to be one of the first live auctions of the year. It seems pretty early.
Yes, I think it is. And that's contrast that with even just 5 years ago. I think, March we would typically have, even before COVID, when it was starting to transition to online auctions, we would still have 5 or 6 auctions that were live on-site farm auctions in the spring of the year. And COVID really changed all of that. The bidders really embraced the online environment, and it got to be the point where, in the States at least, I think you do a little bit better with a lot of these farm retirements on an online deal. So I'm really excited to have a live auction up in Canada.
Okay. When we talk, Max, you mentioned some of the trade tensions that our governments have between the U.S. and Canada, and obviously the cross-border relationships in this part of the world. We're neighbors, we're friends. Yep. In some of your travels, Chris, how are things going for conversations?
Rusty, that's really been top of mind for everybody, and it's one of the very first questions. It's within the first 5, and the unfortunate answer is nobody has an answer.
Yeah,
because we just don't know. Originally the tariffs were going to go on quite a bit earlier. Now it is supposedly April 2nd, and our live auction is April 3rd.
And these things can change all the time.
And we don't know what it's going to be on, right?
Yeah.
Is it going to be on energy? Is it going to be on steel? Is it going to be on used combines? I don't know. So
that would be bad.
It would be. But we just don't have an answer. I think our hope, and this hope, when I say our, isn't a Steffes hope or a Chris Gellner hope. It's an everyone hope that between now and April 2nd, some of the tensions change and some plans get put together, and maybe all of the rhetoric slows down a little bit, and we can just go about running the business and going back and forth across the border. That's kind of the hope for everybody.
That sounds good.
So it's interesting that's one of the top 5 questions you get asked when you're visiting with a prospective seller or anybody?
Absolutely.
Is this after they call you a Yankee or before?
Usually before, because when I don't like my answer, then I get the Yankee part.
Well, you're picking up on the small things that you got to learn, like pies at auction sales.
Absolutely.
It's a learning process.
They got to educate you, right?
Yeah, that's right. Eh?
For some of the equipment on the construction side, Chris, in-demand items, things you see in Canada that we may not see in the U.S. Is there a lot of similarity between our construction industries north of the border as compared in the U.S.? Any differences there?
Rusty, the reality is not even just the construction side, but if you take the Midwest and go up into the breadbasket of Canada, the Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta, the similarities, you change the border and say decal instead of decal. That's about
Yes.
the only difference. I
Yep.
mean, really, the people are the same. Their ethics are the same. The way they want to just be treated and do business, it's all very similar. And so to answer your question, not a lot of differences. You know, the biggest surprise to me, to be honest with you, was when we were looking at values of assets. And the Canadian dollar. Obviously, the Canadian dollar is much more volatile than the U.S. dollar is right now.
Okay.
And, you know, everyone from the States says, well, man, the Canadian dollar's off 30%. I'm going to go up and I'm going to buy X, and I'm going to get it for 30% less until they look at the values. Even though the Canadian dollar is more volatile, the Canadian marketplace does hold on to value better. And so we're actually seeing, even ag or construction, really doesn't matter, anywhere from a 5 to 15% higher price, even though the dollar is lower in Canada than in the U.S. So
Really?
the face you just showed me is exactly what I thought. I went, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around, to be fully honest with you.
Yeah. Could you explain? Why do you think that is?
You know, the reality is when you get up to Canada versus the U.S., it's just not as populated. So you get into the U.S. and there is a Case dealer, there is a Caterpillar dealer, there's a John Deere dealer, a Ford dealer, a Kenworth dealer. Pick what you want. You go north of the border and you can't find those every 20 miles or 50 miles. They're much, much more spread out. So although they do have a lot of assets up there, they're not as heavily populated as they are down in the States. And so because they have a lower volume of assets available, prices are staying strong. So yeah, it's been a real interesting learning curve.
So, you know, in terms, we were talking about Saskatchewan versus Manitoba a little bit there. I was curious why, you know, looking at the auction map in terms of our upcoming auction sales, most of the upcoming auctions are in Saskatchewan.
They are.
And I didn't realize this, but Saskatchewan's farming area is like 4 times larger than Manitoba's.
Correct.
And so Saskatchewan is the ag powerhouse in Canada. Is that right, Chris?
Yeah, for sure. Saskatchewan, and then I would say over into Alberta. Manitoba probably actually ranks about third, to be honest with you.
Really?
Yep. Alberta's got a really, really big play in agriculture, too. I'm learning a lot about the geography. If you've ever heard of Grand Prairie, Alberta, that's 5 hours north of Edmonton, Alberta.
Oh.
There's even big ag up there. And
That's north.
North, 5 hours north.
Yeah.
So didn't realize it, right? And as we're getting up there and learning, we're getting calls from these places and just asking questions to these farmers and contractors, what they're looking for, what they're doing, where they live. And it's a much more diverse area than we're used to up here, or down here, I should say. Yeah, it's really different.
Have we had any response from farmers in Manitoba wanting to book auction sales, or has it been pretty much designated in Saskatchewan?
Without letting too much out, we'll just say we've got lots going on in Manitoba, and we haven't really been over there yet. But the phone's ringing. Phone's definitely ringing.
Good.
Fair to say.
Yeah. Well, you know, when I think Canada, and might be because I'm on the east side of the state, I think Manitoba.
Yep.
Because those are the license plates that we see driving up and down the interstate. But you got to remember the border of Manitoba and Saskatchewan. Where does it sit? Roughly just a little bit west of Minot and straight north?
Actually, is it northwest of Williston? Is where
it's further
Saskatchewan?
west.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because when growing up in Williston, license plates from Canada, you would see Manitoba and Saskatchewan off. Yep. Lots of visitors coming.
Manitoba is more heavily wooded and things like that. You know, the logging business in Canada, it's another thing that something Steffes isn't in very often, because, you know, we don't want to cut down the 16 trees we have in our state.
Yeah, sure.
And
that's true. Because they give a shade.
Well, they do, correct. As long as you're lucky enough to be close to one. You know, but the reality is when you look at Canada, if you look at like Tisdale, Saskatchewan, where Bruce Shapansky lives, you don't have to drive very far. And when I say not very far, you know, maybe 50, 70 kilometers, and you're in what they call the bush. And it's the bush. It's heavy. And there's an extreme steady line that runs from Manitoba up and around there and back into Alberta and British Columbia. And the logging industry is very, very heavy there as well. In fact, one of our sales guys up in Tisdale, he spent, I want to say, 15 or 20 years in the logging industry just east of Tisdale in Hudson Bay, not the Hudson Bay everyone thinks.
Yeah.
Because when we landed in Hudson Bay, it was not what I expected. But very heavy in logging. So it's something else we're learning and getting phone calls on. So,
okay.
The geography is just fascinating to me as a North Dakota boy. You start talking about some of these towns and, you know, oh, that's 8 hours west, that's 6 hours east. And it's like the difference between going from Fargo to Billings, Montana to like Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The areas are just so much larger up there in terms of what they think about and talk about.
Yeah,
distance is
the expanse.
Yeah, it's much more expansive. So that's been an education for me personally. Probably for you too, Chris.
Yeah, try driving it.
Yeah, yeah. That's the other thing. There's no other way to do it than talking to Chris and some of the guys that are going up there. There's no good airports to fly into because you fly into an airport and you still got to drive 4 hours and then you got to rent a car, and by the time you figure all that out, you'd probably be halfway there if you got in a pickup and just went.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk logistics real quick about your upcoming auction at the beginning of April. Getting all of the Steffes folks from here, like you, Max, that want to go up north of the border for the sale. That's a lot of manpower just getting everybody there.
We've had a lot of meetings, and we're continuing to have meetings in terms of, hey, you got to have a passport.
Yes.
So that's a big deal when we start looking at our company
the
roster.
Real ID doesn't work at the border.
No. So you got to have the passport, and then logistically getting in. We want to be sure that we say the right things when we're asked what we're doing up there. Mm-hmm. Training has been the key word that I've heard a lot. We're training, which is true. So some of those things in terms of crossing the border, and then from an equipment standpoint, we had to get our clerk trailer up there. So we actually had Chris, maybe talk about that. You and Mark worked very hard on getting our clerk trailer, our egg iron trailer, as people in the valley might recognize, the big trailer that was at the fairgrounds all those years. Mm-hmm. We moved that actually up to Canada.
Yeah, so again, all these learning curves, right? And when you have a Canadian business and a U.S. business, they're under one umbrella but totally separate entities. And so figuring out what paperwork goes where, having to sell internally a truck and a trailer and a pickup and a topper and sell those to our Canadian company and pay taxes one way or another. And it was logistically quite a bit of work, and it was all selling it to ourselves.
Yeah.
But legally, that's what you had to do to get the things across the border and do that. So yeah, it took some time, but everything is up there, ready to go. As far as getting people up there, there's going to be pickups, there's going to be cars, there's going to be private planes, there's going to be people flying in on commercial planes. All of the above. Yeah. So it's going to take some doing, but it's going to be fun.
And it's our debut performance in Canada. It's a significant deal for our company, obviously for our sellers are exiting production agriculture. But, every auction, especially a live auction, is a job interview. Mm-hmm. And we're going to have 300-400 people there. And, who knows how many of them are engaged in agriculture and are thinking about having an auction in the next 5-10 years. We want to make a good impression on those folks, not only do a good job for our sellers, but make sure that we're representing ourselves in the standard that we hold in terms of the Steffes way of doing business. So we're really excited about that, but there's a lot of pressure from a people and personnel and systems perspective. You got to remember, it's been a while since we've done a live on-site farm auction, so we're going through our checklists and having meetings almost every day in terms of, okay, what do we need, who do we need type of thing. So a lot of anticipation leading up to the 2nd of April.
Yeah, that's very exciting. And when you say it's like a job interview, you're right, because the performance you do, bring in your A game, and folks may be familiar with Steffes Group in Canada, but this is your moment to shine in the spotlight.
Exactly. No pressure.
No pressure.
Something like that.
No, we're up for the
That's
challenge.
what we do every day.
Yep.
So we've got the auction on the calendar. It's set. And we're talking about the border and where all the lines are drawn. If a farmer hears this and he lives in Noonan, if he lives in Crosby, North Dakota, Grenora, and he wants to bid and buy in this auction coming up, is there anything they should keep in mind before they place that bid?
Rusty, the reality is the best thing they can do is just give us a call. Dependent on what they're going to buy, definitely can make a difference on how things are getting across. Okay. And we are by no means experts yet, but we can give them some good advice on what we know, who to talk to, trucking companies that can get things back and forth across the border that are known and trusted. We've got some great people that we work with all the time. So the reality is just give Steffes a call and chat with Max or myself or anyone, and we'll be able to help you out and figure out how to get it back down here.
And when you look online at the auction listing, there's all sorts of contact information there, so it should be very easy to reach out and get some answers.
For sure. It's all right there at your fingertips. You go to steffesgroup.com. Usually the seller number and name is listed there, along with the representatives that are representing that equipment on behalf of Steffes and the seller.
Okay. That's it for our time on this episode of Auction Talk. Chris, thank you for coming back into the studio.
Thanks for having me, Rusty.
I had a good time. Did you, eh?
That was great, eh?
I had to throw in an A.
Got to work on that. Maybe I'll learn when I go up there.
Max, thank you for coming in, too.
Yeah, thank you, Rusty. Appreciate you.
You've been listening to Auction Talk with Steffes Group on the Mighty 790 and 104.7 KFGO.